Welcome to Mission Majjhima, Ajahn.
Ajahn.
Ajahn, so tell us about the Cūḻavedalla Sutta, Majjhima number 44.
So the Cūḻavedalla Sutta is one of two Vedalla suttas along with the previous Majjhima Nikaya 43. And this series of questions and answers takes place between Venerable Dhammadinnā, who the Buddha labeled as foremost among his bhikkhuni disciples in teaching the Dhamma, and the merchant Visākha, who's different than the lady Visākha, which many people will know of. And the commentaries say the merchant Visākha was Venerable Dhammadinnā's former husband and a non-returner, so the third level of awakening. Unsure how accurate that is, but it's an interesting context. The discussion begins with Visākha asking about Sakkaya, personal identity, or existence, and personal identity. And what is that? And Venerable Dhammadinnā answers by saying it is the five aggregates of clinging: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. And specifically the Upadana Khandha. So these are aggregates associated with clinging, that we cling to and posit identity into. And it's interesting that there's five of them, just like there are five fingers on a grasping hand. Visākha then kind of digs in deeper, asking if these can be separated from the craving which is wound into them. And Venerable Dhammadinnā says they're not completely separate from that craving and grasping. And then goes on to speak about how we create self-view, Sakkaya Ditthi, around these aggregates. And that's the first of the fetters let go of on the path to awakening. Saying how we posit self, saying I am form, or positing self as form, positing form as in self, self as in form, and self as possessing form. So these four ways we take these aggregates as identity, and runs through those four iterations with all five, leading to the 20 kinds of self-identity view. Then Visākha asks about the path away from letting go of this identity and self-identity view, and the Noble Eightfold Path. So after speaking about the Noble Eightfold Path, they begin to talk about samadhi and concentration of mind, its themes, etc. From there, move on to formations of mental activity, to letting go of formations, and moving into this profound state of concentration called the cessation of perception and feeling, sanya vetaita nirodha, which is referenced in the previous discourse. And there, speaking about how it can serve as a basis for further letting go. And this is a profound state referenced in many places as adjacent to awakening, and in some places even only accessible to anagamis, non-returners, and arahants, so very close to awakening. Then Venerable Dhammadinnā speaks about feeling in more detail, and finally to this fascinating kind of back and forth about the counterparts of various aspects of the path. So where would you take us from here? What do you find interesting in this discourse?
I find the question about does the Noble Eightfold Path, is that a subset of the aggregates of virtue, concentration, wisdom, sila, samadhi, panya? Or is it the other way around? Is sila, samadhi, panya, virtue, concentration, wisdom, are those a subset of the Noble Eightfold Path? So which is the larger umbrella? And the answer that Dhammadinnā gives is that the Noble Eightfold Path is subsumed within the larger category of sila, samadhi, panya, virtue, concentration, wisdom. And what that implies is that we've got a big circle of virtue, concentration, wisdom, and within that, just a smaller circle of the Noble Eightfold Path. So the Noble Eightfold Path is what is necessary to attain stream entry, to attain enlightenment. So there's all these other aspects of good actions, of a very still mind, of wisdom, things which can be known, which are not necessary to attain awakening. So there's aspects of virtue which one doesn't have to utterly perfect every aspect of speech, of livelihood, of action. So refinements, so the Buddha doesn't, in theravada, doesn't mandate vegetarianism. Similarly with concentration, there are aspects of concentration which the Buddha called wrong concentration, which are not necessary for enlightenment. And similarly, you don't have to know everything to attain awakening. There are aspects of panya which are not necessary for part of the Noble Eightfold Path. This has a lot of implications. Before going on a bit more, what did you find interesting, Ajahn?
One thing I'd like to point out before all others is the culmination of the whole discourse in this counterpart, the Buddha Visākha asking about the counterpart of pleasant feeling, of painful, and then finally getting to what is the counterpart of nibbana. And Venerable Dhammadinnā says, you have reached the limit of questioning. You have not discerned the limit of questioning. And the fact that every system of thought and practice rests on some a priori assumptions. At some level, you have to kind of take these, decide on a goal to move towards, or as some foundational assumption you're working on. And in the Buddhist dispensation, that is nibbana, which is not in the end unprovable because you can actually touch it yourself. So it's a good a priori because it's experientially, it's possible to experience. But also the fact that nibbana doesn't need to justify itself by society. It doesn't need any validation by any other metric. It is enough in and of itself. It is the limit and the goal of the holy life. And that's really important because throughout society and history, there's been all these attempts to make monastics and practitioners justify their existence in every which way. And we can, there's great benefit that comes from purifying the heart. But in the end, nibbana needs no justification. Just to draw out another gem here is on samadhi, concentration. Venerable Dhammadinnā says, ekaggata, unification of mind, is samadhi, concentration. Its themes are the four foundations of mindfulness. Its requisites are the four right efforts, and any cultivation or development of these qualities is its development. And the fact that the themes of samadhi is the satipatthana. Ajahn Chah has that famous simile where he says, whenever you have a moment of mindfulness, it's like a drop from a faucet. And if you keep on putting drop after drop and turning up the amount of water, soon it's this unbroken, pure, smooth stream. And that this is the route to which one moves towards samadhi. I mean, something simple but beautiful and quite profound. Ajahn, what else would you bring out in this discourse?
Towards the end, Venerable Dhammadinnā is talking about feeling. So what is that which is pleasant and unpleasant about each of these types of feeling? And Dhammadinnā so masterfully, and the Buddha then at the end agrees with all of this, says, so sukha, or that which is pleasant pleasant when it persists, and unpleasant, dukkha, when it passes away. Dukkha is dukkha when it persists, and it's sukha when it passes away. And then neutrality, and here's a very interesting insight, is that neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling is pleasant when it is known, when there's jnana, when there's knowledge of it, and it's unpleasant when you don't know it. So when you're feeling bored in meditation, bored in your life, if you just know that, if you bring a level of mindfulness, that this jnana, then it can actually, you can bring some pleasantness to what is otherwise boredom. Also, a very important implication is that the question is asked, are the underlying tendencies of craving or inclining, which underlies pleasant feeling, the aversion, which underlies unpleasant feeling, and the ignorance, which underlies neutral feeling, are those always to be absolutely abandoned? And there's nuance here. The answer is no. So you have some meditative traditions which say anything that comes up, if it's pleasant, painful, or neutral, just observe it. Don't do anything with it. The correct answer is always in meditation, just observe. But here, Dhammadinnā, and then the Buddha gives an example that actually the sukha of jhana is to be encouraged. It's not just to be, if sukha arises, you can encourage it. You can encourage pleasant feelings when you have the skill to do that. And the allowance for dukkha, you can actually think, oh, when will I realize the liberation of mind that enlightened beings already realize? And that in itself it's a longing. It entails a level of aversion, but the Buddha and Dhammadinnā allow it if it leads to the abandoning of aversion, using aversion to abandon aversion, using craving or inclining to abandon inclining, and then using neutrality to abandon neutrality through the cultivation of the fourth jhana, which is the perfection of mindfulness, the perfection of just the peace of equanimity. Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
The word of the week is Sakkaya, which can mean personal identity or substantial identity. It comes from the root sat, which means personal or existing being, kaya, which means body, and yeah, Sakhaya.
All right.